I'm Emily Carter, 37 from Springfield, Illinois, where family is supposed to stand by you no matter what. I scrimped and saved for years to build a college fund for my niece, Lily, trusting my sister Sarah was doing her part. My heart shattered when I discovered Sarah swiped $7,000 of it for Lily's extravagant prom, without a word to me. When she had the nerve to beg me for more cash to fix her mess, I knew it was time to make her face the consequences of her betrayal. Before I share how I turned the tables on Sarah in a way she'll never forget, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever been let down by someone you trusted, hit like and subscribe to join me on this journey of reclaiming justice. Springfield, Illinois, wraps you in a warm blanket of small-town charm, tree-lined streets, the hum of the county fair, neighbors waving from porches. But beneath the cozy surface, family ties can unravel like a cheap sweater. My sister Sarah Bennett, 40, has always been the star of our family story. With her golden curls and a laugh that could melt ice, she was homecoming queen, the lead in every school play, and the girl who got what she wanted with a wink. I was her shadow, quiet, practical, with plain brown hair and a knack for numbers that nobody cared about. While she dazzled at dances, I tallied my allowance in a notebook, dreaming of a life where stability trumped chaos. Our differences carved our roles early. Sarah was the dreamer, chasing fleeting thrills, new boyfriends, sketchy business ideas, late-night parties. I was the one who cleaned up after her. At 16, she'd sneak out, leaving me to lie to Mom. "She's studying," I'd mumble, clutching the candy bar she'd tossed me as payment, my heart pounding for her approval. Mom called her a free spirit, while I was the sensible one. Sensible wasn't a compliment. It meant I'd fix Sarah's messes, missed curfews, unpaid phone bills, without a fuss. Dad, who ran a hardware store on Main Street, would pat my shoulder and say, "You keep things together." But keeping things together meant fading into the background, unnoticed. Sarah's biggest chaos hit at 23 when she got pregnant with Lily. Her boyfriend bolted, leaving her to raise a baby alone. The family circled the wagons. Dad drained his savings for her rent, and Mom babysat, while Sarah juggled waitressing gigs. I admired her grit, but I saw the truth. She leaned on everyone else to fix her problems. When her electricity was cut off, I slipped her $50 from my summer job at the bank. When her car broke down, I lent her $200, which she swore she'd repay but never did. "You're a lifesaver," she'd say, and I'd swallow the doubt, hoping this time she meant it. Springfield runs on trust, and I gave mine to her freely. Lily, though, was a gift. Born with her mother's hazel eyes and a shy smile, she hooked my heart from her first giggle. Now 17, she's smart and kind, navigating life with a grace her mother lacks. Growing up with Sarah hasn't been smooth. One month, Sarah would buy Lily a fancy backpack. The next, they'd dodge eviction notices. I tried to be the steady aunt, cheering at Lily's soccer games or slipping her $20 for lunch money when Sarah was between jobs. My husband, Michael, a mechanic at the auto shop, and I have our own daughter, Ava, 14, who's wading through high school's social minefield. We're not flush. My accounting job keeps us afloat, but we've always planned ahead, saving for Ava's college and keeping our debts at bay. 5 years ago, I wanted to give Lily a shot at something better. College could break the cycle of struggle that trapped Sarah. With Sarah barely making ends meet, I pitched a college fund for Lily. "We'll both contribute," I said, my voice bright with hope. Sarah's face lit up. "That's genius. I'll pitch in too." I opened a joint savings account, in both our names for trust, but I handled it since Sarah couldn't balance a budget. I poured in what I could, $100 from birthdays, $300 from tax refunds, $100 from a work bonus. Sarah said she was adding too, though her deposits were spotty. "I threw in $50 last month," she'd claim, and I'd nod, taking her at her word. By last year, the fund hit $11,000. Not a golden ticket, but enough for community college or a state school's first year. We had one ironclad rule. The money was for Lily's college only. Not rent, not clothes, not bills, and absolutely not prom. I drilled it into Sarah every time I sent her the account balance. "This is for Lily's education," I'd say, and she'd reply, "Got it, no worries." I trusted her, maybe because I wanted to believe family meant something in Springfield. Prom season crashed into town like a sparkling tsunami this April. Lily, a junior, was electric with excitement. She'd never been into frills, but prom was her chance to shine. When I saw her photos on Facebook, my breath caught. She glowed in a pale blue gown, her hair swept into an elegant updo, makeup flawless, nails glittering like stars. Her friends matched her radiance, posing by the Sangamon River after dinner at Giovanni's, the ritziest Italian spot in town. They'd rented a glossy black limo, and a professional photographer captured every moment. It was a fairy tale night, the kind kids dream of. But as I scrolled through the pictures, a knot tightened in my chest. Sarah's receptionist job at the dental clinic barely covered their basics. How did they pull this off? I dismissed the unease at first. Sarah had been obsessed with prom for weeks, saying she'd found ways to make it happen. I figured she'd picked up extra hours or cut corners. Lily deserved it, I told myself. Her year had been brutal. A breakup wrecked her grades, and Sarah's latest rent drama had shaken her. Prom was a chance to feel like she belonged, to forget the stress. I was happy for her, even if the extravagance gnawed at me. Springfield's prom scene isn't cheap. Dresses, limos, fancy dinners add up fast. I should have asked questions, but I didn't want to spoil Lily's joy. That joy turned to ashes 3 days ago. I was at our kitchen table, juggling bills for Ava's braces, when I decided to check Lily's college fund. I log in monthly to keep things straight. When the balance loaded, my heart stopped. $4,000. $7,000? Gone. I refreshed the page, praying it was a glitch. It wasn't. The withdrawals were recent, wired straight to Sarah's personal account. My hands shook as I pulled up the details. $3,500 on April 10th, $2,000 on April 15th, smaller sums rounding out the rest. The dates matched prom perfectly. I called Sarah, my voice trembling. "What happened to Lily's college fund?" I asked, clinging to hope it was a mistake. She sighed, like I was blowing things out of proportion. "I was gonna tell you," she said, her tone slippery. "I only used some of it." I pressed, and she snapped. "It was for Lily's prom, okay? She needed to feel special. You saw how happy she was." My stomach churned as she reeled off costs. $1,200 for the dress, $800 for the limo, $500 for hair and makeup, $1,000 for dinner and photos. Each number was a punch, obliterating years of my sacrifices. Skipped date nights, secondhand clothes for Ava, every dollar I'd scraped for Lily's future. "You took $7,000 without asking," I said, my voice cracking. "That was for her college, Sarah. We agreed." She scoffed. "I didn't spend it all. There's still $4,000. That's enough for community college if she doesn't get a scholarship. I'll rebuild it this summer." Her casual dismissal floored me. $7,000, my trust, my effort, tossed away for one night of glitz. Then came the real blow. "I'm short now," she said, her voice softening. "Can you loan me $2,000? Just till payday." I froze, the phone heavy in my hand. She wasn't sorry. She expected me to bail her out, like I'd done countless times. I remembered every loan she'd dodged. $500 for her car, $200 for groceries that became a new jacket, $300 for rent that vanished. I'd said yes because she was my sister, because I loved Lily, because I wanted our family to stay whole. I took a deep breath. "No," I said, my voice cold but steady. Sarah exploded. "You're holding money over me," she screamed. "You don't care about Lily or me." She hung up, and soon my phone buzzed with Mom's texts. "Family sticks together," she wrote, lecturing me about prom's importance and Sarah's struggles. I stared at her words, anger tangled with guilt. Then Lily texted, shattering me. Auntie, I'm so sorry. I didn't know Mom used my college fund. Please don't fight. I pictured her, trapped in her mother's mess, her future at risk. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. Sarah hadn't just stolen from Lily's dreams. She'd broken my faith in our family. That night, staring into the dark, I knew I couldn't let this go. Sarah thought she could take my trust for granted, but she was about to learn how wrong she was. The weight of Sarah's betrayal pressed down like the thick Springfield fog rolling off the Sangamon River, heavy and inescapable. I sat at the kitchen table late into the night, the laptop's glow casting sharp shadows as the college fund's $4,000 balance stared back, a bitter echo of her deceit. $7,000, years of skipped family vacations, thrift store outfits for Ava, every hard-earned bonus, had vanished into a prom dress, a rented limo, and a fleeting night of glamour. The quiet streets outside, lined with brick homes and flickering streetlights, felt suffocating, their small-town serenity clashing with the storm in my heart. I wanted to march to Sarah's apartment, demand she explain how she could rob her own daughter's future, but blind rage wouldn't protect Lily or force Sarah to own her actions. I needed a plan, a way to shield my niece and break the cycle of being my sister's safety net. As dawn crept through the blinds, painting the linoleum with soft gold, I knew this fight would stretch me to my breaking point. Michael found me there, his work boots scuffing the floor as he shuffled in with a steaming mug. "You didn't sleep, did you?" he asked, his voice rough from early shifts at the auto shop. I spilled it all: Sarah's theft, Lily's tearful text, Mom's guilt-laden messages. He pulled a chair close, his calloused hand steadying mine. "She's been playing you for years, Emily," he said, his jaw tight with frustration. "You don't owe her a thing. Focus on Lily." His words sliced through my anger, grounding me. Michael had witnessed Sarah's patterns for too long. Her charm, her excuses, her knack for dodging blame while I cleaned up her chaos. "If you want to help Lily," he added, "do it your way, not through Sarah." That lit a spark of determination. I couldn't erase her betrayal, but I could seize control of the future. My phone buzzed with a relentless cascade of texts from Mom, each a plea to hold the family together. "Sarah's struggling," she wrote. "Prom was for Lily's happiness. Can't you loan her the $2,000? I clenched my teeth, tears blurring the screen as her words stung. Then came messages from Aunt Linda, Cousin Mark, even Mrs. Jenkins from the library, all chanting, "Family's family." Springfield's gossip mill was in full swing, painting me as the cold-hearted sister who wouldn't aid a single mom. The pressure was a vice, squeezing my resolve until I could barely breathe. I wanted to cave, to send the money and hush the town's whispers, but Lily's words, I didn't know, held me firm. She deserved a future, not her mother's fleeting whims. I needed an outsider's clarity, someone to strip away the family's rose-colored lens. That afternoon, I slipped into Betty's diner, where the jukebox played soft country melodies, and the air carried the warm scent of bacon and freshly baked pie. My best friend Rachel, a nurse with a no-nonsense edge, was already in our usual booth, her coffee steaming. I poured out the story: Sarah's theft, the extravagant prom costs, the family's backlash. "She stole from her own kid's college fund," Rachel said, her mug hitting the table with a sharp clink. "And now she's begging you to fix it? Emily, that's beyond low." Her bluntness was a lifeline, pulling me from the guilt that gnawed at my chest. "What's your next step?" she asked, her gaze intense. I admitted I was adrift, torn between fury and duty. "You've been her crutch too long," she said. "Protect Lily and let Sarah face her mess." Rachel's advice mirrored Michael's, forging a path through my turmoil. I couldn't keep propping Sarah up, but abandoning Lily was unthinkable. That evening, I pored over the college fund's details, the dining room table strewn with papers under the dim lamplight. The joint account was my error. Trusting Sarah had been blind faith. I called the bank, my voice steadier than my shaking hands. "Can I move the remaining balance to a new account?" I asked Judy, the teller who'd known me since I was a kid buying candy at her counter. "Yes, with your name on it," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "But bring ID, and consider a lawyer if Sarah fights it." A lawyer. The idea felt like stepping into uncharted waters, but Sarah's actions had left me no alternative. The next morning I visited Tom Grayson, a Springfield attorney whose office overlooked the courthouse square, its windows framing the town's historic dome against a gray, overcast sky. Tom, with his gray beard and warm, weathered eyes, listened as I laid out the facts, my voice trembling slightly. "You've got a strong case," he said, scribbling notes on a yellow legal pad. "The account's in your name, too, and you can argue the funds were for Lily's education, not prom. But family disputes turn bitter, Emily. Are you prepared?" I paused, envisioning Mom's tears, Sarah's outbursts, the family dinners that would never be the same. Then I pictured Lily, her dreams teetering on the edge. "I'm prepared," I said, my voice resolute. Tom drafted a letter notifying Sarah that I was transferring the $4,000 to a new account in my name only, to be held for Lily's college when she turned 18. "This'll stir the pot," he warned, handing me the draft. I nodded, steeling myself for the backlash. The letter unleashed a tempest. Sarah called that night, her voice a whirlwind of panic and venom. "Emily, you're locking me out of my daughter's money?" she shrieked, the words crackling through the phone. "You're treating me like a criminal." I held my composure, though my heart pounded. "You took $7,000 without asking," I said, my voice steady but icy. "I'm protecting what's left for Lily." She hung up, but the calls kept coming. Mom, Aunt Linda, even Mr. Carlson, my old neighbor who'd once patched my bike tire, all pleading Sarah's case. "She's a single mom," Mom cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "It was one mistake." I wanted to shout that a mistake doesn't cost $7,000, that it was a betrayal of Lily's future, but I swallowed the words. Guilt settled like a stone in my chest, but Rachel's voice echoed, "Let Sarah face her consequences." Lily's text cut deeper than anything else. I called her, needing her voice to anchor me. "Auntie," she said, her tone fragile as a cracked eggshell. "I feel terrible. I thought Mom saved up for prom." My chest tightened, imagining her in her cluttered room, surrounded by school books and faded posters, trapped in her mother's chaos. "It's not your fault," I assured her, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm ensuring you have college money." She hesitated, her breath catching. "Thanks," she whispered. "I don't want you and Mom to fight." I promised we'd resolve it, though uncertainty gnawed at me. Lily shouldn't bear this burden, but Sarah had thrust her into it, and that fueled my determination. Springfield's scrutiny was a relentless tide. At the supermarket, Mrs. Thompson, my old Sunday school teacher, gave me a mournful glance as she bagged my groceries. "Heard about you and Sarah," she said, her hand resting on my arm. "You'll do what's right, dear." My face burned as I rushed to my car, the weight of her pity pressing down. At work, Jen, my cubicle mate, leaned in with a hushed tone. "Is it true you're cutting Sarah off, Emily?" she asked, her eyes wide with intrigue. I nodded stiffly, turning back to my spreadsheets, my cheeks hot. I began avoiding Main Street, taking winding back roads to escape the whispers that shadowed me like a persistent fog. Even Ava noticed, her brow furrowing over breakfast as she asked, "Why's Grandma mad at you?" I hugged her tightly, my heart aching, unsure how to explain that standing firm could turn you into a town outcast. I sought answers in online forums, where strangers shared stories of family financial betrayals. A woman from Texas recounted her sister draining a trust fund for a lavish wedding, leaving her kids with nothing. Set boundaries, she wrote, her advice underscored with urgency. It's the only way they learn. Another user, a financial advisor, detailed 529 college plans, tax benefits, restricted use, legal safeguards. I berated myself for not starting with one, but I acted swiftly. I opened a 529 account for Lily with Tom's guidance, transferring the $4,000. The process was exhausting. Endless forms, notarizations, calls to customer service, but each step felt like reclaiming power. Judy at the bank smiled as I signed the final papers, her eyes crinkling. "You're doing good by that girl," she said. I clung to her words, though self-doubt lingered like a shadow. Reflecting on my past, I confronted my own missteps. I'd enabled Sarah for years, saying yes to loans to win her approval. As kids, she'd been my idol. Bold, radiant, while I covered her tracks, lent money, hoping for closeness. But love shouldn't erase you, shouldn't leave you bearing someone else's burdens. I thought of Ava, her sharp eyes watching me navigate this storm. Was I teaching her to yield to family demands or to stand tall? I chose strength, believing boundaries were a form of love, not rejection. Rachel became my anchor. At Betty's, she shared her story over coffee. "My cousin took $1,500 for rent and blew it on a Vegas trip," she said, her voice low but firm. "I cut him off, and he called me heartless. But he got a job eventually." Her words offered hope, a possibility that Sarah might change if I stopped saving her. "You're not wrong, Emily," Rachel said, squeezing my hand. "You're saving Lily from her mom's chaos." I held on to that when Mom called again, her voice cracking. "Sarah's falling apart," she said. "Can't you help?" I took a deep breath. "No, Mom," I said. "I'm done fixing her mistakes." The turning point came at Aunt Linda's barbecue, a Springfield tradition under twinkling string lights. I'd dodged family gatherings since the drama, the thought of facing Sarah twisting my stomach. But Mom insisted, her tone insistent. "We need to talk this out," she said. I went, my nerves jangling like loose change, knowing Sarah would be there. The backyard buzzed with chatter, kids chasing fireflies across the lawn, the smoky scent of grilled hot dogs mingling with the summer air. Cousins swapped stories over paper plates. Uncles debated the Cardinals' season, and the scene felt like the heart of Springfield. Community, family, togetherness. But it was a stage for a confrontation I couldn't avoid. Sarah arrived late, her eyes red-rimmed but her posture defiant, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun. She cornered me by the picnic table, her voice loud enough to draw eyes from nearby relatives. "Emily, you're stealing Lily's money," she said, her words laced with accusation, playing the victim for the crowd. My face flushed, heat rising under my skin, but I stood tall, refusing to shrink. "You spent $7,000 on prom," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I'm protecting what's left." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, aunts and cousins exchanging glances. Sarah's face crumpled, her voice rising to a desperate pitch. "You're making me the bad guy," she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I did it for Lily." I wanted to back down, to smooth things over like I always had, to spare the family this ugly scene. But I thought of Lily, her text pleading for peace, her dreams at risk because of her mother's choices. I thought of Ava, watching from across the yard, her eyes wide with curiosity. I thought of every time I'd let Sarah slide, swallowing my anger to keep our family whole. "You did it for you," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. "And I'm not bailing you out anymore." The silence was electric, heavy as the humid air. Mom rushed over, her hands fluttering, whispering, "Let's talk inside, please." I shook my head, my feet rooted to the grass. This wasn't just about Sarah. It was about drawing a line, showing everyone I was done enabling her chaos. I turned and left, the murmur of shocked voices fading behind me, my resolve hardening like steel. That night, I planned my dining room table a battlefield of papers and a forgotten cup of tea. Sarah's outburst at the barbecue proved she wouldn't change without a push. Her tears a performance to dodge accountability. Mom's annual family meeting was looming, a tradition she hosted every summer to keep us close, a gathering of aunts, uncles, and cousins in her modest living room. It was the perfect stage to lay out Sarah's actions, not to humiliate her, but to protect Lily and clear my name from the town's whispers. I gathered evidence with a precision that felt foreign. Bank statements showing the $7,000 withdrawals, Lily's text confirming her ignorance, old messages where Sarah swore she'd repay loans for emergencies that turned into new shoes or concert tickets. Each document was a brick in the wall I was building, a shield for Lily's future, a mirror to hold up to Sarah's choices. The process was grueling, my hands trembling as I sorted through years of texts, each one a stab of memory. I found a message from 2 years ago where Sarah had promised, "I'll pay you back the $300 next month, Em. I swear." She never did. Another from last spring, begging for $200 for groceries, followed by a photo of her at a local fair, all smiles with a cotton candy in hand. The evidence was a heavy burden, but collecting it felt like reclaiming my voice, a step toward justice for Lily. I organized it into a folder, my dining room a war room of determination, the clock ticking toward the meeting day. Michael was my steady anchor. As I showed him the folder, neatly tabbed and annotated, he nodded, his eyes warm but serious. "You're doing what's right," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Lily's lucky to have you." His support eased the guilt that flared with every call from Mom, every sidelong glance at the grocery store. Rachel was my fire, texting daily, "Give her hell, Emily. She's had this coming." Her words were a spark, reminding me I wasn't alone, that I wasn't the villain Springfield painted me to be. Lily's trust, fragile but real, was the fuel that kept me going. The family meeting loomed, and I was ready to turn the tables. The days leading up to Mom's family meeting unfolded like a slow, tense overture to a dramatic showdown, each tick of the clock tightening the knot of anticipation in my chest until it throbbed like a second heartbeat. Springfield's summer heat bore down with unrelenting force, the air thick with the earthy scent of freshly mown lawns, the distant hum of lawnmowers blending seamlessly with the ceaseless chirping of cicadas that filled the humid evenings with their song. But inside our modest home, the atmosphere crackled with a nervous energy that kept me pacing the floors. I had spent the past week steeling my resolve. The dining room table transformed into a war room cluttered with evidence, bank statements, Lily's text, Sarah's unkept promises, each document a weapon forged from sleepless nights spent wrestling with guilt, anger, and a burgeoning determination that refused to waver. The decision to confront Sarah before the family wasn't a fleeting impulse. It was the culmination of a week grappling with my conscience, a pivotal moment I knew would reshape the fragile threads of our family ties and alter the course of our relationships for years to come. As the meeting day loomed ever closer, a volatile blend of dread and unyielding determination coursed through my veins, a fire stoked by the knowledge that this was my moment to turn the tables and reclaim what had been taken. Michael, ever my quiet stronghold, sensed the turmoil brewing within me like a storm on the horizon. "You sure about this?" he asked one evening, his hands still smudged with grease from the garage, as he leaned against the counter, wiping them on a rag with a weary sigh that spoke of long hours. I nodded, my fingers tracing the worn edges of the evidence folder, its weight a tangible reminder of my purpose. "I have to," I said, my voice low but resolute, carrying the weight of my decision. "For Lily, for Ava, for myself." He gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze, his eyes warm with unwavering support, a silent promise in their depths. "I'll be right there with you," he promised, his words a quiet vow that steadied my nerves and bolstered my courage. Rachel, my fiery confidant, called to fan the flames of my resolve, her voice crackling with conviction over the phone line.
"You've got this, Emily,"
she said, her tone brimming with encouragement and a hint of mischief. Sarah's had it too easy for too long. Make her squirm a little. Show her the consequences of her actions. Her words stoked my determination, a reminder that I had allies in this battle against my sister's unchecked entitlement, a network of support that gave me strength. The meeting was set for Saturday at Mom's bungalow, a quaint house on the town's outskirts where the usual aroma of her apple pie typically filled the air with a comforting warmth that now felt like a distant memory. This time, the kitchen was steeped in a tense silence, the familiar laughter replaced by cautious glances, the soft clink of coffee cups punctuating the uneasy rustle of folding chairs and the creak of the wooden floor beneath the weight of so many bodies. About 20 relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, gathered in the living room, their voices a low murmur over the occasional cough and the shuffle of feet, their faces a mosaic of curiosity, concern, and unspoken judgment. Sarah arrived late, her eyes red-rimmed but her chin held high with a defiant tilt, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun as if to armor herself against the confrontation to come, her movements stiff with barely concealed anxiety. She avoided my gaze, chatting with Aunt Linda near the fireplace, her laughter forced and brittle, a thin veneer over her nerves, but I felt the weight of her presence like a gathering storm cloud ready to burst. Mom hovered by the sink, her hands twisting a dish towel into knots, her face etched with worry lines that deepened with every glance toward me, her movements betraying a mother's torn heart. I stood by the window, the folder pressed against my chest, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm as the room filled with the hum of anticipation, the air thick with unspoken questions and the scent of nervous sweat. Mom called for attention, her voice quivering like a leaf caught in a gust. "We're here to talk about the family," she began, her eyes flickering toward me with a mix of hope and dread, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the towel. "Things have been strained lately, and we need to address it with open hearts." Before she could steer the conversation further, Sarah stepped forward, her voice slicing through the room like a sharpened blade, her stance wide as if to claim the room's sympathy. "Emily's trying to steal Lily's college money," she declared, her tone dripping with righteous indignation, her words a calculated strike to rally support. The room fell silent, every eye turning to me, the air thick with shock and disbelief, the tension palpable enough to cut with a knife. My pulse raced, a wild drumbeat in my ears, but I steadied myself, stepping into the center with the folder held like a shield, its edges digging into my palms. "That's not true," I said, my voice firm and clear, cutting through the tension like a beacon. "I'm protecting it, because Sarah took $7,000 from it without my consent." A collective gasp rippled through the gathering, the sound like a wave crashing against the rocky banks of the Sangamon River, reverberating off the walls and shaking the room's fragile peace. Sarah's face flushed a deep crimson, her mouth opening to protest, but I pressed on before she could interrupt, my resolve hardening like steel forged in fire. "I have the proof," I said, opening the folder with deliberate care and distributing copies of the bank statements to the outstretched hands around me, the paper rustling like dry leaves in an autumn breeze. The figures, $3,500 on April 10th, $2,000 on April 15th, lay bare before them, stark and undeniable, a silent accusation in black and white that silenced the murmurs. "She used it for Lily's prom," I continued, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "A dress, a limo, dinner at Giovanni's. Lily didn't even know." I handed out Lily's text. Her words, "I didn't know Mom used my college fund," hushing the room into a stunned silence, the air heavy with the weight of her innocence. The room became a gallery of shocked faces, Aunt Linda's hand flying to her mouth in horror, Uncle Joe shaking his head in disbelief, Cousin Mark's brow furrowing as he processed the revelation. Sarah's composure shattered like glass under a hammer's blow, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "That's a lie," she shouted, her voice trembling with desperation, her hands clenching into fists as if to hold on to her crumbling narrative. I was going to pay it back. It was for Lily's happiness, her one chance to shine. I met her gaze, unflinching, my eyes locking with hers across the room, a silent challenge in my stare. "You didn't ask me," I said, my tone cold and deliberate, each word a nail in her defense, driving home the truth. "You broke our agreement. This wasn't about Lily. It was about your pride and your need to prove something." Mom stepped forward, her eyes pleading like a wounded deer caught in headlights, her hands reaching out as if to bridge the widening chasm. "Please, Emily, let's not do this here," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the room's tension, her face a mask of maternal pain. "It's family, and we can work this out privately." But the family was listening, their eyes fixed on me, and I wasn't retreating, not this time. "It's about family," I countered, my voice rising with conviction, my hands gesturing to the evidence on the table. "Lily's future was stolen, and I won't let it happen again. Not to her, not to anyone who depends on me." The tension snapped like a taut string as Sarah launched into her defense, her voice a chaotic blend of tears and defiance, her body trembling with emotion. "I've been a single mom for years," she cried, tears streaming down her face, her hands gesturing wildly as if to paint a picture of her struggles in the air. "You don't know the pressure, the sleepless nights, the bills piling up like a mountain I can't climb, the judgment from every corner of this town. I wanted Lily to have one perfect night, one memory to hold on to when life gets tough, a moment to feel like she belongs." Her words tugged at some hearts. Aunt Linda nodded slowly, her eyes softening with empathy. Mom's lips quivered with a mother's shared pain. But I held my ground, my stance unyielding against the tide of emotion that threatened to sweep me away. "One night shouldn't cost her education," I said, my voice cutting through her sobs like a knife through silk, my tone firm and unapologetic. "You could have asked for help, reached out to any of us, leaned on the family instead of taking it behind my back like a thief in the night, betraying the trust we built." I presented old messages, revealing her promises to repay loans that never materialized, $300 for a car repair that vanished into thin air, $200 for groceries that turned into a new handbag. Each example a testament to her pattern of deceit. "This isn't new," I said, my voice steady and unyielding. "You've been doing this for years, and I've covered for you, shielded you from the consequences. But not anymore, not when it's Lily's future at stake." Cousin Mark, usually reserved and lost in his own world of woodworking, broke the silence with a voice that carried the weight of reason, his presence a sudden anchor in the storm. "Sarah, is this true?" he asked, his tone probing, his eyes searching her face for honesty, his brow furrowed with concern. She faltered, her tears morphing into a flash of anger, her cheeks flushing with defiance as she struggled to maintain her facade. "Emily's exaggerating," she snapped, her voice rising above the murmurs, her hands waving dismissively. "She's always been jealous of me, always trying to outshine me with her perfect little life, her perfect little family." The room buzzed with whispers, a low hum of speculation and doubt, but I stayed focused, my resolve unshaken, my heart pounding with the truth I carried. "Jealous?" I said, my voice climbing with conviction, my hands gesturing to the evidence scattered across the table. "I've been the one bailing you out, hiding your mistakes, picking up the pieces while you danced through life without a care. Not anymore." I unveiled my decisive move, my voice ringing out like a bell. The $4,000 was now secured in a 529 account, locked for Lily's education, beyond Sarah's grasping hands. "When Lily turns 18, she'll control it," I declared, my words a proclamation of justice. "Not you." Sarah's face drained of color, her expression a mask of shock and fury, her hands trembling at her sides as if she might collapse under the weight of her exposure. "You can't do that!" she shrieked, her voice cracking like dry wood under pressure. her body leaning forward in a futile attempt to reclaim control. "That's my daughter. You can't take her future like this. Rip it away from me." Mom intervened, her tone shaky with desperation, her hands reaching out as if to bridge the widening chasm between us, her voice a plea for peace. "Emily, this is too harsh. She's your sister. Can't we find another way to resolve this without tearing us apart, without breaking the family bond?" But Uncle Joe, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, shook his head with a gruff authority that silenced the room, his presence a steady rock amid the chaos. "No, she's got a point," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a saw through timber. "Sarah, you went too far this time, and you know it deep down. Time to face the music." The room divided. Some nodded in reluctant agreement, their faces etched with discomfort. Others averted their eyes, unwilling to take sides in this familial rift. Sarah turned to Mom, her sobs escalating into a desperate plea, her hands clutching Mom's arm as if it were a lifeline. "Are you going to let her do this to me?" she cried, her voice breaking. "Are you going to let her destroy me?" Mom hesitated, her gaze shifting between us, torn between her daughters, her loyalty fractured by the truth laid bare before her. I pressed on, my voice unwavering despite the ache clawing at my throat, my hands steady as I gripped the folder, my resolve a beacon in the storm. "I'm not doing this to hurt you, Sarah. I'm doing it for Lily. You've jeopardized her future with your choices, and I won't let it happen again. Not to her, not to anyone who depends on me for their dreams." I offered a lifeline, my heart pounding with the weight of the moment, my words measured and firm, a bridge extended across the chasm. "If you want to rebuild the fund, prove it. Get a job, save money, start small if you must, and I'll match your contributions, directly to Lily, not through you. Show her you can be the mother she needs, the one she can rely on." Sarah stared, her tears drying into a scowl of defiance, her eyes narrowing with a resentment that had simmered for years. "You think you're better than me?" she spat, her voice venomous, dripping with years of unspoken rivalry. "You've always looked down on me, judged my life, acted like you're some untouchable saint." The accusation stung like a wasp's bite, a sharp pain that tested my composure, but I didn't flinch, my stance unyielding. "I've looked out for you," I said, my tone steady and calm, my eyes holding hers. "Now I'm looking out for her future, for the dreams you've put at risk." The room erupted into a cacophony of hushed debates and sidelong glances, the air thick with the weight of revelations, the sound of shifting chairs and whispered arguments filling the space. Aunt Linda pulled Sarah aside, her whispers fierce and urgent, her voice a low growl as she tried to calm her niece, her hands gesturing with frustration, while Uncle Joe approached me, his step heavy with purpose, his presence a steadying force. "You're brave, kid," he said, his voice rough with respect, his hand resting on my shoulder for a brief moment of solidarity. "But this might split the family apart. Be ready for the fallout, the whispers that'll follow." I nodded, accepting the cost, my resolve unshaken as I met his gaze, feeling the weight of his approval. Mom finally spoke, her voice weary and strained, her hands falling limp at her sides, as if drained of strength. "We need time to process this," she said, her eyes avoiding mine, her tone heavy with resignation and a hint of regret. "But Emily, you've made your stance clear, and we can't ignore the truth you've laid out." The meeting adjourned, the air thick with unresolved tension, the clatter of chairs and the shuffle of feet marking its uneasy end, the room emptying slowly as relatives exchanged uncertain glances. Sarah stormed out, slamming the door with a force that echoed through the house like a thunderclap, her glare a volatile mix of rage and defeat as she vanished into the night, leaving a trail of stunned silence and scattered papers in her wake. Outside, the Springfield night was cool and still, the stars faint above the town's rooftops, the distant glow of streetlights casting long, wavering shadows across the driveway. the air carrying the faint scent of late-blooming jasmine. I leaned against Michael's truck, my legs trembling beneath me but my spirit unbroken, the cool metal grounding me against the emotional whirlwind that raged within. Lily found me there, her footsteps soft on the gravel, her eyes red but resolute, a quiet strength in her posture that mirrored my own. "Auntie, thank you," she said, her voice soft yet firm, carrying a weight of gratitude that warmed my heart like an ember in the dark. "I didn't want this fight, but I understand now why you did it, and I'm so grateful for what you're doing." I hugged her, my heart swelling with a fierce pride, her warmth seeping into my bones as I held her close, my arms a shield around her. "You deserve better," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, my eyes glistening with unshed tears. She nodded, clinging to me, her trust a quiet strength that bolstered my resolve, her small frame trembling slightly with relief. Michael joined us, his arms slipping around my shoulders, his presence a steady comfort in the night's cool embrace, his breath warm against my ear. "You did good," he said, his voice a low rumble of approval, his hand patting my back with a gentle rhythm. Rachel texted later, her message lighting up my phone with a burst of light. "Proud of you, Emily. Sarah's got some soul-searching ahead. Let her stew in it for a while." The victory felt bittersweet, a hollow ache beneath the triumph that gnawed at my insides, a reminder of the family ties strained to breaking. The family was fractured, Mom's silence a silent reprimand that lingered like a shadow in the corners of my mind, her absence from the truck a palpable void. I drove home, the truck's hum filling the quiet, my mind replaying the meeting's echoes, the gasps, the arguments, Sarah's tearful exit, the weight of Uncle Joe's words, the rustle of papers as they were passed around. The weight of the divide pressed on me, a heavy burden I couldn't shake, but I held on to Lily's gratitude, Michael's support, Rachel's encouragement as lifelines in the storm, their voices a chorus that drowned out the doubt. Sarah called the next day, her voice subdued, almost hesitant, a stark contrast to her earlier fury, the line crackling with her uncertainty and vulnerability. "Emily, I'm sorry," she said, the words halting and raw, as if torn from her throat with great effort, each syllable heavy with regret. "I didn't mean to hurt Lily. I panicked, and I didn't know how else to give her that night, to make her feel special in a world that's been so hard on us." I listened, my guard high, my trust in tatters, the phone heavy in my hand as I weighed her words. "Prove it," I said firmly, my tone unyielding, my heart guarded. "Show Lily you can change. Get a job, save something, start small if you have to, but make it real." She paused, the silence stretching like a tightrope across a chasm, then agreed to try, promising to look for extra work at the diner on 4th Street, her voice tinged with a fragile hope. It wasn't forgiveness, but a fragile thread of hope for Lily's sake, a chance for redemption I wasn't sure she'd seize, a gamble on her willingness to change. I hung up, my heart a mix of doubt and cautious optimism, willing to give her a chance to prove herself for her daughter's future, but ready to step in if she faltered. The town buzzed with the meeting's aftermath, a ripple of whispers spreading through Springfield's tight-knit streets like wildfire, carried on the summer breeze. At the post office, Mrs. Larson, the choir director with her silver hair and gentle smile, gave me a thoughtful nod as I mailed a package of old clothes to a charity drive, her presence a quiet acknowledgement. "Heard what happened at your mom's," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of respect and understanding. "Tough call, but it was fair. Takes courage to stand up like that, especially in a place like this." At work, Jen avoided my gaze, the office quieter than usual, the hum of printers a stark contrast to the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog, her silence a small victory in the face of judgment. I braced for more criticism, expecting the town's judgment to sharpen like a blade, the whispers to grow louder. But a few days later, Mom called, her tone cautious, yet tinged with a new respect that surprised me, a shift in her perspective. "I talked to Sarah," she said, her voice steadying as she spoke, a hint of pride breaking through. "She's applying for a second job at the diner on 4th Street. I think she's starting to see her mistakes, to understand the weight of what she did to Lily and to you." Relief mingled with wariness, a cautious optimism taking root in my chest, a fragile hope that the lessons might stick. The family wasn't mended. The cracks remained deep and visible, a jagged scar across our history. But the balance of power had shifted, tilting toward accountability and the possibility of healing. I met Lily again at Lincoln Park, the river's gentle flow a soothing backdrop to our conversation, the water reflecting the late afternoon sun in shimmering waves that danced with the breeze. "I want to help rebuild the fund," she said, her eyes bright with determination, her hands clasped in her lap as if holding on to a new resolve, her voice steady with purpose. "Maybe a part-time job at the bookstore on Main Street, or helping at the library, or even tutoring younger kids?" I smiled, a surge of pride warming me, my heart lifting at her initiative, her willingness to take control of her future. "We'll figure it out together," I said, my voice warm with encouragement, my hand resting on hers in a gesture of solidarity. "You're stronger than you know, and I'll be with you every step of the way, guiding you through this." That night I sat with Ava on the couch, the TV flickering with some cartoon she adored, the soft glow illuminating her face as she leaned against me, her small frame a comfort against my side. I explained boundaries in simple terms she could grasp, my voice gentle but firm, my words carefully chosen. "Sometimes, love means saying no," I told her, stroking her hair as she listened intently, her eyes wide with understanding. "It's about protecting what matters, like your dreams and Lily's, even when it's hard." She nodded, her trust in me a quiet anchor, her small hand squeezing mine with a child's unwavering faith, a bond that strengthened my resolve. The meeting had shifted the terrain beneath our feet, reshaping the landscape of our family dynamics. Sarah's defiance softened into a reluctant acknowledgement, her calls less frequent, her tone less accusatory and more subdued, a sign of her grappling with the consequences, her pride giving way to a tentative humility. The family's perception of me evolved from villain to protector, though not without resistance. Aunt Linda still muttered about family loyalty at the next church picnic. Her eyes narrowed with disapproval as she sipped her lemonade, while Cousin Mark offered a supportive nod from across the pews, his quiet approval a balm. I wasn't certain of the future. Sarah might relapse into old habits, her impulsiveness resurfacing like a stubborn weed. Mom might harbor a lingering resentment that simmered beneath her cautious words. But I'd fought for what mattered most: Lily's future, Ava's example, my own integrity. The next family gathering loomed on the horizon, a test of this new dynamic, a chance to see if the lessons learned would hold firm or crumble under pressure, and I was ready to face it with my head held high, my resolve tempered by the battles fought and the victories won, a quiet strength born from the ashes of conflict. The weeks following the family meeting draped Springfield in a quiet that felt like the calm after a tempest, the air carrying a blend of relief and lingering uncertainty as the town adjusted to the new family dynamics. The familiar sounds of daily life, children's laughter drifting from Lincoln Park, the clatter of dishes at Betty's diner, resumed their rhythm, but within our home, the silence was profound, a space filled with the echoes of that night's confrontation and the weight of choices made. The evidence folder still rested on the dining table, a silent sentinel of the battle fought, but my focus shifted from defense to reconstruction, from conflict to the possibility of mending what was broken. Sarah's tearful exit and her hesitant apology had cracked open a fragile door, and I knew the steps ahead would shape our family's future in ways I couldn't yet fully foresee. As the days settled into a new routine, a quiet strength grew within me, a resolve to guide Lily and Ava through this transformed landscape with care and purpose, a determination born from the trials endured. Michael, my unwavering anchor, noticed the change in my demeanor, his steady presence a constant amid the shifting tides. "You've turned a corner," he said one morning over breakfast, his hands deftly flipping pancakes, the kitchen filled with the comforting scent of warm syrup and batter, the sizzle of the griddle a soothing backdrop. "How are you holding up?" I paused, spreading butter on a pancake, my thoughts swirling like the steam rising from the plate, a mix of exhaustion and hope. "Tired, but stronger," I admitted, my voice soft but steady, carrying a newfound confidence. "I want Lily to have a future, and maybe Sarah can find her footing too, rebuild what she's lost." He nodded, his eyes warm with understanding, a silent acknowledgement of my growth. "You've given her a chance, Emily. That's more than she's earned, and it shows your heart." His support was a lifeline, reinforcing my belief that this wasn't just about punishment, it was about fostering growth, for all of us, a chance to heal the wounds of the past. Rachel called later, her voice bright with pride, her laughter a spark of joy that cut through the lingering tension. "You rocked it, Emily," she said, her tone brimming with admiration. "Sarah's got work to do, but you've planted the seed. Keep nurturing it and watch it grow." Her encouragement bolstered me, a reminder that my stand had set a foundation for change that extended beyond that single night, a ripple effect I could guide. Sarah's promise to find a job became a focal point of this new chapter, a test of her willingness to change. A week after her apologetic call, she texted, her message tentative and laced with vulnerability, the words carefully chosen. "Emily, I started at the diner, part-time for now. Saved $50 this week for Lily." I stared at the screen, a mix of skepticism and cautious hope rising within me, my fingers hovering over the keys as I weighed my response. I replied, "Good start. Show me the effort with consistency. Prove it over time." She sent updates, shifts at the diner, small deposits into a new savings account she opened in Lily's name, each one a tentative step toward accountability, a flicker of responsibility in her actions that hinted at redemption. I matched her contributions to the 529 account, a silent partnership that bypassed her control, ensuring Lily's future remained secure and untouchable by past mistakes, a safeguard I refused to compromise. It wasn't a restoration of trust, but a beginning, a fragile bridge we were constructing together, brick by brick, with each deposit a testament to her effort. Mom called too, her tone softer, a shift in her perspective that carried a note of cautious optimism. "She's trying, Emily," she said, her voice steadying with a hint of pride. "It's hard for her, adjusting to this new path, but she's putting in the effort, step by step." I listened, my guard still raised, but willing to let time and actions prove her words, a willingness to watch and wait for genuine change to take root. Lily emerged as my partner in this rebuilding process, her presence a beacon of hope that illuminated the way forward. We met regularly at Lincoln Park, the river's gentle flow a calming rhythm as we planned her future, the water reflecting the golden hues of late afternoon, a mirror to our renewed purpose. "I got a job at the bookstore," she said one day, her eyes bright with pride, a stack of novels tucked under her arm like a badge of honor, her voice trembling with excitement. "Part-time, after school. I want to save too, maybe $20 a week to start, something I can build on." I smiled, a surge of pride swelling within me, my heart lifting at her initiative, her willingness to take control of her destiny with a maturity that belied her years. "That's amazing," I said, my voice warm with encouragement, my hand resting on hers in a gesture of solidarity, a promise sealed in that quiet moment. "We'll track it together, make sure it grows into something solid and lasting." We set up a savings schedule, her earnings adding to the 529, my matches doubling the impact, a collaborative effort that strengthened our bond and gave her a sense of ownership over her future. At home, Ava watched our planning sessions. Her curiosity piqued as she perched on the couch, her small frame curled up with a book. "Why's Lily working?" she asked, her head tilted with innocent wonder, her voice a soft inquiry. I explained, "She's building her future, like we are. Sometimes we help each other grow stronger, lift each other up." She nodded, her trust in me a quiet bond, her small hand reaching for mine with a child's unwavering faith, a connection that deepened with each shared moment. The town's perception began to shift, a gradual thaw in the frost of judgment that had once chilled our interactions. At the grocery store, Mrs. Thompson gave me a nod, her usual pity replaced by a quiet respect, her eyes crinkling at the corners with a knowing smile. "Heard about Sarah's job?" she said, her voice low and warm. "You did right by that girl. Gave her a path forward when she needed it most." At church, Mrs. Larson smiled during the hymn, her voice blending with the choir in a harmonious swell. "Strength takes time to build, and you're showing it," she murmured as we passed in the aisle, a subtle acknowledgement that eased my burden. The whispers that once trailed me like shadows faded, replaced by a cautious acceptance, the town's smallness transforming from a burden into a community I could navigate with my head held high, a place where my actions were beginning to resonate. At work, the tension eased, Jen offering a hesitant, "Good for you, Emily," one afternoon as we shared a coffee break, her words a small bridge over our past awkwardness, a sign of mended fences that promised better days. Sarah and I met face to face for the first time since the meeting, choosing a quiet corner of Betty's diner where the jukebox played a soft tune and the scent of coffee grounded us in the moment, the hum of conversation a gentle backdrop.
Emily,
"I messed up," she said, her eyes downcast, her hands fidgeting with a napkin, tearing it into small pieces as she spoke, a nervous habit that revealed her vulnerability. "I've been selfish, leaning on you instead of standing on my own, taking your support for granted. I'm trying to change, to be better for Lily, to earn back what I've lost." I listened, my heart guarded, my trust still a fragile thing that needed time to mend. "It's not about me," I said, my voice steady, my gaze fixed on her. "It's about Lily. Keep proving it, through actions, not just words. Show her you're there for her, not just for yourself." She nodded, tears welling but not falling, a sign of her struggle to confront her past, her voice a whisper of resolve. "I will. For her," she promised, her hands stilling on the table. We agreed to monthly check-ins, her progress a test of her commitment, a schedule to monitor her savings and ensure her effort was real and sustained, a framework to rebuild trust. It wasn't reconciliation, but a step toward understanding, a path I was willing to explore for Lily's benefit, a tentative truce in our long-standing conflict. Mom extended an olive branch with a dinner invitation, a rare gathering at her bungalow, where the table was set with her best china, the air filled with the aroma of roast chicken and the faint tang of nervousness that hung like a mist. Sarah was there, quieter than usual, helping Mom in the kitchen, her movements deliberate as she passed plates, a contrast to her usual haste. "I'm glad you're both here," Mom said, her voice shaky but sincere, her hands smoothing the tablecloth with a mother's care. "We've been through a lot, and I want us to move forward, to find a way back to each other." I nodded, watching Sarah serve Lily a portion with a gentle hand, a small gesture of care that hinted at change, a flicker of the sister I once knew. "It's a start," I said, my tone cautious but open, my heart softening at the sight. The meal was awkward, the conversation stilted with long pauses, filled with the clink of cutlery, but the silence held a promise of healing, a fragile thread we might weave stronger with time, a shared meal that bridged the gap and offered a glimpse of reconciliation. Lily's growth became a source of inspiration, her progress a light that guided my path. She joined a study group at school, her grades climbing steadily from C's to B's, her confidence blossoming like the wildflowers along the riverbank, her smile returning with each success. "I want to be a teacher," she told me one afternoon at the park, the river sparkling beside us, her voice filled with a new dream that shone in her eyes. "To help kids who feel lost, like I did when things were tough." I beamed, my pride swelling like a rising tide. "You will," I said, my voice steady with conviction. "We'll get you there, step by step, with every resource we can find." We researched scholarships, her part-time job earnings adding to our plan, a collaborative effort that deepened our bond and gave her a sense of agency, a partnership that empowered her. At home, I shared this with Ava, teaching her about perseverance as we sat by the fireplace, the crackling flames casting a warm glow. "Lily's fighting for her dreams," I said, tucking her into bed with a storybook. "You can too, with hard work and heart, no matter the obstacles." She grinned. Her imagination sparked, a future unfolding before her eyes, her questions a sign of her growing understanding and curiosity about the world. Sarah's efforts continued to unfold with cautious progress. She took on extra shifts at the diner, her savings growing with each paycheck, a slow but steady climb, and I matched them. Our silent partnership a testament to her change, a quiet alliance that bypassed her past control and ensured Lily's security. One evening, she brought Lily to our house, a peace offering that filled the living room with a tentative warmth, the scent of her homemade cookies lingering in the air. "Thanks, Emily," she said, her voice sincere, her eyes meeting mine with a rare vulnerability that pierced through her usual defenses. "I'm learning to stand on my own, to be the mom Lily needs." I nodded, accepting the gesture, the first crack in the wall between us, a breach that hinted at reconciliation, a softening of old wounds. Mom joined us, her smile tentative but genuine, her presence a bridge. "Maybe we can move forward together," she said, her hand resting on the table, her fingers tracing the wood grain. The night ended with laughter over a board game, a rare sound that suggested a healing process, a shared joy that bridged the past and pointed to a future of unity. The community began to reflect this shift, a gradual transformation in the town's perception. At the farmer's market, Mr. Peterson, my old softball coach, tipped his hat as I bought fresh tomatoes, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "Proud of you," he said, his voice gruff but kind, a nod to my stand. At the library, Mrs. Jenkins smiled as Lily shelved books, her voice warm with approval. "She's shining brighter every day," she noted, a testament to our efforts. The town's judgment softened, my stand a quiet victory that rippled outward, its impact felt in the nods and smiles that replaced the whispers. Work colleagues, including Jen, engaged more, their respect growing with each passing week. Her coffee breaks with me a sign of mended fences, a return to camaraderie. Springfield, once a cage of scrutiny, became a place of support, its closeness a strength I could draw upon, a community that began to recognize my resolve. I reflected on the journey, the lessons etched into my soul like carvings on an old oak. The fight had taught me the power of boundaries, the strength in saying no for love's sake, a lesson that reshaped my understanding of family. With Michael, we planned a family trip to the Ozarks, a reward for our resilience, the first vacation in years, a chance to breathe and reconnect as a unit, to leave the shadows of conflict behind. We mapped out the route, imagining the crisp air and rolling hills, a promise of renewal. Rachel visited, her laughter filling our home with light, her presence a celebration of our progress. "You've grown, Emily," she said, hugging me tightly, her voice thick with emotion, "into someone unstoppable, a force for good." Lily's progress, Ava's curiosity, Sarah's tentative steps, all pointed to a future where we could heal, not as we were, but as a family redefined by effort, understanding, and shared goals, a tapestry woven with new threads. The next gathering approached, a test of our new bonds, a chance to see if the fragile piece would hold or fracture under pressure. I prepared with hope, organizing a small contribution from my savings to add to Lily's fund, a gesture to show my commitment. I practiced conversations with Ava, teaching her about resilience, her questions a sign of her growth. With Michael, we discussed inviting Sarah and Lily, a step toward inclusion if her efforts continued. The day loomed, and I was ready to face it with the strength I'd forged, the lessons learned guiding me toward a brighter horizon, a future where love and boundaries coexisted in harmony. The journey through this storm has taught me a truth I'll carry forever. My worth isn't defined by pleasing others, but by standing for what's right, even when it hurts. Springfield's quiet streets, once a place of judgment, now feel like a canvas where I've painted a new story, one of resilience, boundaries, and love redefined. The fight to protect Lily's future wasn't just about money. It was about showing her, Ava, and myself that family means respect, not blind sacrifice. Sarah's transformation, from defiance to tentative effort, and Lily's rise with her bookstore job and teaching dreams, prove that change is possible when we hold each other accountable with courage and consistency. Looking back, I see how far we've come. Lily's savings grow with each shift, her smile brighter as she plans her education, a future she now owns with pride. Sarah's extra hours at the diner, matched by my contributions, build a bridge we never thought possible, her apologies turning into actions that hint at redemption and self-awareness. Mom's dinners, once tense, now hold laughter, a sign of healing threads weaving us back together, a family finding its footing. Ava learns from this, her questions about strength and love shaping her into someone who values her own worth. Michael and Rachel stand beside me, their support a foundation for this new chapter, a testament to the power of alliance. The trip to the Ozarks, planned with hope, marks a celebration of our endurance, a family reborn through shared struggle and triumph. This experience has reshaped my understanding of family. It's not about enduring pain in silence, but about setting limits that foster growth and mutual respect. I've learned that love can be tough, a force that demands accountability while offering second chances, a balance that strengthens rather than breaks. Springfield, with its gossip and support, mirrors this lesson. Community can judge, but it can also uplift when we stand tall with integrity. The next gathering looms, a test of these lessons, and I face it with confidence, knowing the strength I've gained. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone close to protect your own peace? I'd love to hear how you navigated those moments in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like it and subscribe to join our community of those who rise above challenges. Remember, your true strength lies in staying true to yourself, even when the path feels lonely. Thank you for walking this journey with me, and until we meet again, keep shining with your authentic light.